Hey guys, this is Kevin again, and today what I thought I would talk to you about is some advice regarding personal safety and security in the Philippines. And bear with me again because I have notes that I'm going to try to kind of follow and keep up with to be sure that I'm covering everything that I need to. But let me start off with this. Personally, I lived in Manila for, pardon me. I lived in Manila for 9 years, which is a very crowded city where a lot of bad things can happen. But personally, I never felt like my life was threatened or in danger there. I was never robbed or mugged as far as someone stealing something from me by force. That can happen. If you're in the habit of going out at night a lot, it can happen to you. I've had friends that's happened to. If you're walking down dark alleys at 3 a.m., pretty much anywhere in the world, you increase your risk of getting mugged. So that can happen. But what I'm really going to be talking about in this video is the more common thing, and that is pickpockets. So, here in the U.S., I tend to be a little bit more concerned about having somebody put a gun in my face, more violent stuff. In the Philippines, I wasn't quite as concerned about that as I was just petty theft, pickpockets. And it's just something, I guess that could happen here in the U.S. too, but it's something that I was a lot more aware of when I was living in the Philippines because there are people who are desperate, and there are people who do nothing except that for a living. That's their job. They go out every morning or every night and try to find some kind of victim so they can just steal something, whether it's valuable, whether it's not very valuable. That's how they earn their living. So a few things to keep in mind when we're thinking about pickpockets, personal security. You have to be aware of the fact that if you are a Westerner in the Philippines, you are automatically a little bit more of a target than someone else. They are just going to assume that you have money. And if you think about it, if you're in the Philippines and you're obviously a foreigner, you at least had $1,000 or so to afford the plane ticket. So that part of it kind of makes sense. And another thing, as a Westerner or as a foreigner, uh, you may not be aware of the things that Filipinos already do to protect themselves, some of the steps that they're already going to take. So it's kind of two reasons why Westerners get singled out. They know you have money, and they're also going to assume that you're new there and not aware of all the different schemes and that kind of thing. And so those two things are reasons why you need to be extra vigilant. So how do you handle this? How can you keep from getting yourself pickpocketed or something like that? The first thing I would say is just a general awareness. Anytime that you go out, especially at night, but heck, even during the daytime, when you're out, you need to be generally more aware of your surroundings than you may be if you were just here in the U.S. walking around at Walmart. You just have to have a general kind of street smarts awareness of who all is around you, who may be coming up to you from behind, things like that. A couple of the things that people will try to do is the pickpockets they'll try to get near you in some type of crowded situation. If let's say you're in a line waiting for a bus or a jeepney, or you're on a crowded sidewalk, let's say it's kind of flooded and that's narrowed the sidewalk and you're kind of compressed. Those are the kind of situations where pickpockets love to try to find a victim. Or even another common area is overpasses because those tend to be narrow. Another thing that pickpockets love is the jeepneys. Now, I rode jeepneys all the time, but what they really like to do is get next to you on a crowded jeepney. Some of them will even have razors that they'll try to use to open your bag or even your pocket. Another thing to look out for on a jeepney is what a lot of guys will do is they'll have a backpack that they will put on their lap. And sometimes you'll notice there's nothing in it. That's a telltale sign. They'll put their backpack on their lap because that way they can reach under their backpack and try to see if they can grab something of yours without it being quite as obvious. One time I remember, this was when I was in Angeles City, I had gotten on a Jeep to go to the bus station to go to Manila, and I actually had a team working on me. There was a guy sitting on my right who was kind of pretending that I was too close to him and didn't have room. He was trying to push me towards this guy to my left. And then there was a guy in front of me trying to distract me by asking me what time it was. And I remember I could just tell something was up. And I looked down and I see a hand, the guy on my left, kind of trying to see if he could reach under one of his legs and into my pocket. And once they figured out once they knew that I had figured out what they were doing, they stopped pretty quickly. By that time, I was actually about to get off of the Jeep, so I really didn't do anything to them. I should have warned the other passengers, but it kind of caught me off guard, but they didn't get anything from me. So those are just a few MOs that you need to be aware of. Always, always think about situations where somebody can get next to you or get near you without it being completely obvious. So that's one thing. Know the MO, be more aware. Another thing is if you have something valuable like a cell phone, do not show it off. Like if you're in a Jeep, do not take your cell phone out in a Jeep to text other people. Even maybe on like the monorail, the LRT or MRT in Manila, do not take those things out and show off what you have. Just kind of keep them hidden. Another thing that I did that may be a good idea is in terms of cell phones, I always just kept a really cheap cell phone. The cell phones I owned in the Philippines were like, I think one model was called Nokia 1100 or something like that. Really cheap. All it did was call and text, no internet. But for me, it was just, I lost or had phones snatched a time or two in the Philippines. And for me, it just never made sense to carry around a phone worth $300 or $400 or more. To me, it was just something that was too easy to get broken or stolen. So one of my methods was I just never kept a really expensive cell phone with me. Another thing you could do if you wanted to is you could have one cell phone that you use at home or in more secure situations, but then if you're going to go out at night or go out in a situation where you can't, control your environment as much, then you have your cheap cell phone. In terms of backpacks and bags, what you'll see a lot of guys do is they'll carry their backpack actually on their front. And I did that if I had something really valuable in my backpack, there were times that I would do that. Now it looks kind of dorky. I mean, it looks like you're doing some kind of, wearing some kind of prosthetic for a maternity clothes or something like that. But it is effective. And when I had my laptop with me, I'm okay with looking dorky if I don't get a $1,000 piece of equipment stolen from me. So with backpacks, what you have to keep in mind if you're a foreigner and you have a backpack, that's a target. I can think of times when I was walking through, I lived in the university area of Manila, University Belt area. And I remember one time walking down the sidewalk and I thought I felt something happen, in my backpack. And I look at the sidewalk and there's a piece of paper laying on the sidewalk and it's my electricity bill. Someone had reached in there and pulled it out, maybe thinking it was money, but they obviously dropped it once they realized it wasn't valuable. And I think I'd already paid that bill anyway. It's not something I needed. But that just lets you know that even for me, someone who was at that time a veteran, someone had managed to unzip my bag and grab something without me knowing about it. So at that time, I probably had nothing of that valuable in my book bag, which is why I had it on my back. But if you have a backpack, it's not a bad idea if you have something valuable in it to keep it in front of you. And yeah, it looks kind of weird, but people that see you doing that, they think nothing of it. They know exactly why you're doing it. And while we're on the subject of backpacks, any kind of bag you have, ladies, this can mean a purse or a camera bag, anything. You just want to keep it in your sight and near your person at all times. If you go to McDonald's or something and you have a backpack or a purse, what you probably want to do is put that in your lap and maybe even keep a hand on it if it's crowded there. I know of a lot of tourists who've gone to Manila and other places in the Philippines, and they have a backpack, a camera bag, something like that, and they go to McDonald's or a restaurant, and they just kind of put it down to their side, and then they're not paying much attention because they don't understand how the risk of it getting stolen, and someone will distract them while someone maybe even sitting behind them will reach back and grab it and then take off. So anytime you have a bag or a backpack, you're always going to have to keep an eye on it. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Finally, I'll tell you something that I did that worked pretty well. Is instead of a wallet, you don't want to keep a wallet in your back pocket, or I never did. Again, for me, that is an open invitation. They see you a Westerner, they see something in your back pocket, that becomes their target. What I usually did is I kept a money clip, and this thing worked really well because, as you can see, I could put my peso bills in this, and all my cards and stuff would fit in here. Here's my old driver's license and my old ACR, I think it's called, the alien registration card. And I would just keep this with me. And what I would do is I would put all my valuables, all my money here, and then I would put it in my front pocket. And then I would take my cheap cell phone and my keys, also put them in the same pocket. And I would, if I was in a situation that I needed a little bit extra security, I would just physically put my hand on that pocket where all the valuables are. Or I would even put my hand in that pocket where the valuables are. And if you think about it, what that does is it makes it to where no one could have reached my wallet or my phone without me detecting them. And that worked really well. Now let me give you an idea of just how sneaky people can be and how easy it can be to get something stolen from you. A few years ago, when I was still living in Manila, it was Christmas Day. So I got pickpocketed on Christmas Day. And I made the mistake of riding the LRT. The LRT is a monorail that goes through Manila. And because it was Christmas Day, it was free. And I made the foolish decision to just jump on the LRT because I was thinking, well, it's free. And I did not realize just how crowded it was going to be because the streets were not that crowded, but the LRT was packed. Well, in my left pocket, I had my money clip, I had one of my cell phones, I had my keys, and I was guarding that pocket. The problem was I had some gifts in my right hand. I had some books, and I had another cell phone in my right pocket. Now you say, well, why do you have two cell phones? Well, I'll talk about that maybe some other time, but I just had these two cheap cell phones. I was not guarding my right pocket because I had a handful of books. If I had thought ahead or just had a bag to carry the books in, this may not have happened. But you can guess what happens. I get on the Jeep, I get packed in there, I'm guarding my left pocket, I'm unable to guard my right pocket. I thought I felt something in the Jeep. I looked down and I thought I felt someone reaching in my right pocket, but it happened pretty quickly. I get off the LRT and one of my phones is gone. So that's just how easily something like that can happen. Now, I made some mistakes. It was dumb on my part too. I should have just taken a taxi to where I was going because, like I said, the streets were fairly clear. I had not planned on on needing to guard both pockets. I just put myself in that situation and my cell phone was gone. Again, the good part of that is it was a cheap cell phone. Whoever stole it from me probably thought he or she was going to get something really nice, and then they get this phone that's probably worth about $8 used. So, so the good part of that is they didn't really get anything that valuable from me. Next day or two, I just went to the mall and bought another one. But hopefully, these are some tips that can help you. Again, just be aware, and if you can take some simple steps, you will greatly decrease your chances of being the victim of these kind of crimes. Keep in mind, with most pickpockets, they're not really trying to hurt you. What they want is an easy target that they can steal from without really being noticed. Quick, easy, no violence. That's what most of them want. So if you can simply make yourself a target that is difficult, that's going to keep most people away from you. So anyway, hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions about being an expat in the Philippines, about this topic or any other, you can feel free to leave a comment down here, and I'll do my best to answer that. So I'll see you next time.